I've been playing Japanese role-playing games for as far back as I can remember. They've always been in my life, and as a result, they've become my favorite genre of video game. Despite my relatively young age compared to the greater expansive history of JRPGs, I've made it my personal goal to play as many of them as I possibly can. And while I am by no means an expert, I did want to take some time and talk about some of the recurring tropes I've seen crop up during my time playing as brooding anime boys with oversized swords. Specifically, I want to talk about the classic JRPG party, and even more specifically, the types of characters you'll find within it and how they affect the party as a whole. Now, when I say classic, I'm referring to what I call a classic-style JRPG. These consist of a vast world to explore, a huge cast of characters, a deep and involving story, and so on. Your Final Fantasies, Tales of, Star Ocean, and Dragon Quest, things like that. I've come to the conclusion that in almost every JRPG out there, you'll find one, if not all of these specific character roles in the playable party. I've loosely identified these roles as the main protagonist, the secondary protagonist, the best friend character, the old character, the child character, and the non-human/different race character. Now let me make something clear, I obviously haven't played every JRPG in existence, nor do I really intend to. This is not a comprehensive analysis of every playable character in every JRPG fucking ever. As such, you'll hear me use the word usually a lot. I'm not making any definitive statements about all of JRPGs, I'm just making some observations. I'm also definitely not the first person to make these kinds of observations, but goddammit, I'm gonna be the first person to make a video about it. We good? Cool. To start off, I want to make special note of my use of the word character roles, and not something like archetypes or personalities. A character's role within the greater context of the party, and by extension the story, is really independent of that character's personality. A main protagonist can be an angsty and melodramatic or cheerful and down to earth. They're still always going to be the main protagonist. This of course applies to every character within a party. Their roles and their personalities are separate. Secondly, I'd like to take a guess as to why we see this combination of character roles so frequently. Obviously, I don't have any insider information on every game I may mention in this video, but my main guess would be that a strong balance of character perspectives makes for a more interesting and dynamic party. If every character were, say, a teenager, you're going to be constricted in your writing in some ways if you want it to be believable. You'll have to write your characters as, well, teenagers, whatever you may define that as. Having an array of ages and races in your party is going to provide you with the most freedom when it comes to writing character perspectives and motivations. I don't think it's a stretch to say that people of vastly different ages and races will tend to look at the world differently in some ways. So let's actually break down these character roles. First, we have the main protagonist. This is usually a male between the ages of 17 and 21. They most likely use a sword or some variation of a sword for combat. They have strong morals and are usually different from the rest of the party in some key way. For example, they might be the chosen one, have a special ability, be the result of some kind of science experiment, have a unique upbringing, etc. Hell, maybe they're just a fucking dream. Usually they're portrayed as an average person that is somewhat ignorant to the world around them. Some notable examples would be Yuri Lowell, Shulk, Tidus, Yu Narukami, and Lloyd Irving. Next, we have the secondary protagonist. Usually a female in the same age range as the main protagonist, and more often than not, a love interest. While the secondary protagonist is usually the opposite in terms of personality to the main protagonist, they often share the same strong morals. They are often highborn or privileged in some way, be they of royal blood, wealthy background, or some kind of religious figure. Examples would be Estelle, Garnet, Yuna, Marl, and Fiora. It's usually the case in most fantasy-inspired settings that either the main protagonist or the secondary protagonist be the chosen one, or have some kind of unique role to play within that world. It's almost never the case that both or neither of them are this way. This is so that the two characters can be written in contrast to one another. One of them plays the role of the everyman, and the other plays the role of the upper class. This isn't unique to JRPGs by any means, but it is something you see in them quite often. Moving right along, we have up next the best friend character. Usually the same gender and age range as the main protagonist, and usually has known them since childhood or at the very least the beginning of their journey. They usually act as a foil to the main character in terms of their personality, and in some cases as a younger or older sibling type character. Examples would be Kane Highwind, Waka, Flynn Shifo, Zack Fair, and Riku. Up next, we have the old character, which is a terrible title for a character role, but please bear with me. The old character is usually a male and is, as the name suggests, the oldest member of the party. How much older they are than everyone else can vary wildly. It's usually about 10 to 15 years older than the main protagonist, but in some cases it can be as much as 40 to 50 years older than everyone else. They usually take part in some prior events that lead up to the main story of the game and are often some kind of high-ranking official or famous individual in that game's world. The old character almost always takes on some kind of parental role within the party and acts as a source of wisdom. Some examples would be Orin, Jade Curtis, Raven, Bosch, and Dunban. Up next, we have the complete opposite of the old character in the child character. While the gender of the child character varies, their age is pretty much always in the 12 to 14 range. The child character usually provides some kind of perspective to the party that they wouldn't have had otherwise, either through their backstory or some kind of specialized knowledge that they have. Unsurprisingly, they also often take on a role of a younger sibling, either to the main character or some other party member. Examples would be Carol Capel, Aiko, Hope, Beat, and Anis. And last but not least, we have the non-human character. This is a character role that I found has the most variation among JRPGs, as it allows for the creation of a character that really is supposed to exist outside the rest of that cast and by extension the rest of the people in that world. Their gender varies across games, sometimes not having a defined gender at all, and their age varies greatly as well, sometimes being considered very young by the standards of their own race, but old when compared to everyone else in the party. The personality of the non-human character can also vary greatly from game to game, but one thing that's usually for certain is that they often act in a way that the other party members find strange, further emphasizing the fact that they're different from everyone else. This of course is also relative. Strange to the rest of the party might be perfectly normal to their race. The non-human character has usually been ostracized from their society, or at the very least is seen as an oddball among their kin. If it's neither of those, it's not uncommon for them to be the last one or one of the last of their race, which has either been wiped out mostly or completely. I should also point out that while it is rare, there are sometimes instances of non-human characters in the party that are simply animals that inhabit the world of that game. Their only real defining feature is that they usually have very high intelligence for an animal and probably use a weapon of some sort. Examples of both kinds of non-human characters are Judith, Freya, Red 13, Fran, Repeat, and Koromaru. Even though I've only gone into depth on 6 of these character roles because I find them to be the most prevalent, there are other kinds of character archetypes that are commonplace in JRPGs, yet lack just enough complexity to be considered party roles on their own. I say that because they're more like add-ons to a character rather than a defining feature. To name a few of these archetypes, there's the Peeping Tom, the fan service character, the Hothead, the Oddball, the Rogue, the Sheltered Royal, the Tsundere, the Rival, the Mascot character, the Perky Teen, the Tortured Soul, and so on. These sub-archetypes help to distinguish 2 characters who may serve the same role in the greater party context. This becomes valuable in games that have very large playable character rosters, such as Final Fantasy VI, which has multiple child characters, old characters, and non-human characters. It's also important to note that a single character can wear many hats when it comes to their role in the party. For example, it's not uncommon for the secondary protagonist to also be the best friend character, or for the best friend character to also be the rival character. Similarly, the child character can also be the best friend character, and the mascot character is almost always the non-human character. Like I said before, this is by no means a comprehensive list of every kind of playable character that exists in JRPGs, but I'm willing to bet you'll find a handful of these characters in almost every JRPG. Almost every JRPG. Since I've gone out of my way to identify what I see as common and in many cases tired character roles, it's only fair that I name some games that don't really use any of these tropes and still succeed at being great on their own. The Mario RPG series in all of its incarnations is a fantastic example of games that tend to have a pretty wide cast of playable characters, with almost none of them falling into the character roles I described. Characters are often quite unique from game to game, for the most part, which keeps each game feeling fresh. The Mother series is another great example, as the party is usually quite small, consisting of 3 to 4 members, most of whom are children, with a few adults and animals sprinkled in as well. Other series like Kingdom Hearts, the Soulsborne games, and Pokemon also stray from these party conventions, but if I broke each and every one of these down, we'd be here for even longer. Like I said at the very beginning of this video, these are simply some observations that I've made whilst playing many JRPGs over my years. There are certainly series and games that I never mentioned during this video that either completely confirm or contradict what I've laid out in this video, and that's fine. I'm not trying to make a definitive statement about the genre. Some of my absolute favorite games fall right into these tropes, and I love them all the same. Remember, just because someone is making an observation or critique about a thing that you like doesn't mean it's any less valuable to you. Only you can dictate the worth of something. And with that, I've got nothing left to say. I hope you all enjoyed the video because I actually had a lot of fun making it. If you'd like to see more videos, then please consider smashing that fucking subscribe button because I'm definitely going to be pumping out more in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.